Good morning, nerds. This is episode 10 of the Unity first-person shooter tutorial. Today we are going to be looking at how to do a zoom. I'm referring to this as the sniper zoom, but we're just going to enable it on all guns. You could do some Boolean, some Boolean values on individual guns in your gun struct if you wanted to make this a little bit more nuanced and only work with certain guns. But I'm just going to go ahead and enable zoom for everything. Now, the way that we're going to do this, as always, and I feel like a broken record, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyways, as always in Unity, there's about a dozen ways to do this. The one I'm going to show you is programmatically pretty easy. It's relatively easy to follow, but it's not necessarily going to give you as finer results as some of the different camera controls and stuff that you might see in a more AAA kind of a first-person shooter. So this is a pretty good zoom. It definitely gets the idea across, but it's not necessarily as precise and as accurate as maybe some of the other zooms are. And I don't necessarily mean accurate, but accurate relative to the gun or like the gun's scope. It's really just going to involve manipulating our camera a little bit and adjusting some things. So the first trick that we're going to do here is we are going to take a look at how would we zoom. And there's a lot of different tricks we could do. We could certainly do something like, for instance, we could definitely do something like move the camera. So like I'm gonna switch my game view here into a different tab. Again, I'm just grabbing that tab and dragging it over. So this gives me like a little bit of a view between my Unity and between my my game view and my scene view. So one possible strategy I could use to solve this problem would be to do something along the lines of, if I wanted to zoom, I could essentially grab the green handle and move that forward and pull back. Now the problem is, and I'm going to do a Control Z so that way none of this actually takes effect. The problem with doing it that way is that if there's something else in the middle, so we're going to go ahead and, where's that enemy that I had? I have lost the enemy. We're going to bring the enemy back in. He's been gone for a couple of tutorials now. We're going to go ahead and bring the enemy and put him somewhat close. So we're going to pretend that I wanted to use the camera movement zoom. And again, I'm just grabbing the main camera and we're going to zoom in. Well, what's going to quickly happen is while I'm zooming back here, I've just completely overshot that enemy, and now I can't see the thing directly in front of me. And that's less of a zoom than a camera migration. So again, we're going to Control Z that. So I'm not really happy with that result. Another trick that we could do is we can play with the focal length of the camera. And that's what we call the field of view. Now, here's the issue, is a normal person sees just a little under 90 degrees in a forward arc. And if we examine that, I'm going to give my game view a little bit more room here. If we examine the result of that, for example, if we narrow my field of view, you can see that my vision tightens up. And the reason it tightens up is because I'm still representing it. Normally, if the view changes, to our eyeballs, this is a little bit different. But what it still has to do is it has to now take a smaller angle measurement. And let's see if we can see that. Sometimes it'll show me the actual camera path. We can kind of see what it's doing here. You can kind of, this is tough to see on my white background. I think what I'm going to do here is temporarily, at least, we're just going to put a different colored floor in, because it's hard to see the white lines here. So I'm going to grab the bullet material and just drag that onto the floor for a second. I don't really want it to be that color, but now if I look at that main camera, we can kind of see these white lines here. And what happens is if I mess with the focal field of view, we can see that I'm changing on the left side here. We can see that I'm changing the angle that the camera is projecting. So for example, this is a very, very wide angle, and that's causing a lot of distortion over here on the left. But I'm projecting a very, very wide angle of my camera. On the flip side, if I lower this, over here we can see that this is a very, very, very narrow focal length, but it still has to stretch out against the entire width of the screen. So what's happening here is it's drawing everything in this span and stretching it here, which is effectively zooming things in. And at 0.01 or 0.1, that's a pretty gross angle. But if we separate it out a little bit, we can really change this field of view. 60 degrees or so is kind of our standard. And actually, I'm going to, again, zoom back out. I'm going to Control Z because I never let go of it. Oh, I did. I'm going to Control Z a couple times here. Uh-oh. Actually, I'm going to Control Z a bunch, and we're going to see if we can get back to, there we go. Now we're back to kind of where we started with 60 degrees, and everything's kind of left alone. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of just mess with this, and I want to make it so that I can zoom a lot tighter. And what we're seeing now is really what's happening is I'm zooming in on the floor, and I'm not really too happy about that. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this camera. That's because the camera is actually pointing down quite a bit. If we go and look in our scene view, and we make, instead of center, we use local, and instead of global, we use local positioning, we can see that that camera is really pointing almost straight down at my feet, which has been good up until this point because it's giving us a pretty good angle on what we've been trying to look at and focus on, but not too good for us. What I think I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull that forward a little bit, and I'm going to pull it maybe even into my head because this is going to make it more of a first-person view anyways. And then I'm going to rotate. I'm going to lighten up that rotation. So I'm going to go down to maybe 5 degrees. So I'm still kind of pointed down a little bit, but not nearly as much. And really, what I'm trying to do is lower, so I'm kind of inside, and I can really kind of see where that gun is. But I don't want to pull it back so far that I start looking through the sphere for my face. So this is really pretty good. And actually, if we look at this, I could really go almost more horizontal now. I think I'm going to go to 0 degrees because really I'm almost looking straight out the character's eyeballs because we've kind of used this sphere to denote my face. And I've got my gun is here in the corner. So really I'm trying to back out so I can kind of see the gun. And this is putting my camera in a little bit better spot. And I'm going to go ahead and just play this real fast because I also want to see the effect on my bullets. My bullets kind of drift more towards the center. I'm going to disable the enemy here again for a quick second because I want to be able to see the effect with some different guns. And just kind of make sure I can still see some spread. So there's my my rocket launcher. We're going to look at my machine gun. My machine gun's looking pretty good. If anything, I think it looks better from this angle. My triple shot still looks like a triple shot, although it's kind of at a weird, it looks like it's at a weird angle because of forced perspective. My shotgun is definitely looking like it's bursting more left than anything, but it kind of comes out in the center anyways. So I don't know if I really like the camera being here. I might tweak this a little bit and be a little fake with things. And again, this is always more of an art than a science here, but I'm gonna grab that main camera. And I think what I'm going to do is just pull it a little bit to the left and get things more from a gun's eye view. And that's pulling, I can see a little bit of my circle in here, or my sphere rather. So we're going to try to get that sphere out of there. Maybe pull forward a bit so that way the sphere is not in our view plane. And that's going to give us, I think, almost more of a more traditional first-person shooter look. And I, again, want to see the effect with the shotgun. So I'm going to kind of look at some of these other guns. It's still really kind of blasting towards the center for me, so I'm not really excited about how this is looking. But I can play around with this quite a bit. I'm gonna try just centering it right on the gun. So that's kind of going forward. I'm really having the camera follow my gun and not my player at this point. I don't know how I feel about that really, but we'll try that. I'm going to lift up a little bit. There we go. So that's giving me a much more centered view on my gun, which isn't really accurate to where the player is looking, but honestly, this feels better from the player perspective. So I think we're going to go ahead and mount our camera almost more related to relative to our gun than to our actual player. That is going to cause a little bit of weird, oh, I've been playing in play mode that entire time, but that's okay. So that is going to cause a little bit of weird. I'm readjusting that slightly. I'm trying to get rid of that little, that white line at the bottom. There we go. Okay, so this does feel a little bit weird if we start running into like a wall or something. It is going to create a little bit of weirdness to our movement in that I'm moving forward, but it almost looks like I'm moving a little bit to the right. But I think this is going to feel, I still feel like this feels pretty good. Okay, so got a little bit of clipping issues there, but that's the camera clipped through the wall. Okay, so this is feeling pretty okay. So the next thing that we're going to look at now that we've got this going is, again, we're going to kind of line up here. Actually, I'm just going to stop this, and we're going to put that enemy back in so we can see what he looks like. And I want to see that enemy in the view. Now, if we look at our camera, again, we're going to play around with that focal length. Well, if I switch this to a very, very small length, definitely I'm zoomed in, but I'm still seeing the enemy in the near plane, which kind of makes sense, like he's in my way. And the nice thing here is if I grab that enemy and I actually move him closer, let's see if we can grab that blue handle here. If we grab that enemy and we move him closer, there's his blue. He's still in our field of view until he gets super close, and then that's where we kind of have problems with the fact that he's really drifting off to our left a little bit because our camera is mounted on the gun and not the player. But even close up, that is a really close up enemy, but we can definitely see him. And the nice thing is if he gets further back, he's very far away from us, but he looks very, very close. So I think we're going to go ahead and leave this. It's, again, not as good as I would like. And one trick that we could be using is keep the camera up here, and then as we zoom, move the camera closer to the thing. So we kind of dolly the camera and zoom the camera. And I think that would actually give us a little bit more natural effect that plays a little bit better. But that's a little bit beyond scope of what we're going to do. So I'm not going to mess with that too much. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set up, so I can do this manually all I want, and it's kind of fun, but it's not really helping us. What we want to be able to do is control this, but it's important for us to know what numbers we want to use first. So 60 was our default view. That feels pretty good for my like normal long distance, look how far away he is view. And we need to figure out like how close do I want to be able to get. I feel like 10, we're seeing him from this far away and he looks this close. I think any more zoom than that, and it starts to get a little bit crazy, especially as I get close to a wall. So I feel like 10 is a good stopping point. So what we want to do now is we want to get a smooth line zoom between about 60 and about 10, where it's going to just slowly interpolate over time to zoom us into 10. And then when we're not holding that button, we're going to like back it off. And I'm going to use the right mouse button for this. So now we kind of know everything that we need to know in order to make this work. That's fantastic. So let's start taking a look at code. Now that we've kind of got this planned out, I'm going to return my zoom to 60, which I'm just going to type in. I'm sorry, not zoom, but field of view. We can also do this off the horizontal axis, but the vertical is usually our wide axis, and that makes the most sense. I'm sorry, excuse me. The vertical is our narrow axis, and if we deal with it there, it's relative. Horizontal can kind of get weird, and horizontal view is a little bit closer to 80 degrees. It's smarter to work off of the vertical. So we're going to work off vertical. Okay, so the only time you wouldn't want to work off vertical, you'd want to use horizontal zoom, is if you were using a display that was taller than it was wide, for example, on a mobile device, where a lot of times you're using it in portrait mode. And in portrait mode, you would definitely want to be using horizontal FOV instead of vertical FOV. Which you probably wouldn't be doing with a first-person shooter, but in other game types, that might be a useful thing. Like if you need to zoom in on the action in a portrait mode game, that would be how you would do it. You would adjust the horizontal FOV instead of the vertical. Okay, so now that we've covered that a little bit, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and try to implement. So we've got all the data we need. Again, we're going to track between 60 and 10. And that's really about what we need to know. So what we're going to do here is, as usual, we are going to set up some variables. And our variables here are going to be, there's not very many of them. And as I usually do here, I'm going to give myself another variable area just to kind of keep things clustered together in ways that make some sense. So we're going to do public float zoom speed. This is how fast we get closer to our zoom. And for now, we're going to set that to a speed of 1. I'm pretty sure that's going to be too slow, but this is going to get us started. And then because it's public, we can just adjust in the inspector like usual. We're going to do public float FOV, so field of view max is going to be 60. Field of view minimum is going to be 10, sorry. That's the lowest it can go. And public float FOV is going to be our current FOV. And you're going to notice that I'm leaving that one blank for now. That's deliberate. We're going to set that using kind of the same trick that we did with our hit points. Also worth noting is that as we zoom in, we are getting closer to 10, which means we need to actually subtract to increase our zoom, which feels a little bit backwards, but that's how this needs to work because we're decreasing our FOV. And then as we zoom out, we need to be adding to our zoom. So we need to keep that in mind as we go. Okay, so we're going to do, in our start, what we want to do is assign our current FOV to the camera's FOV. And for this, what we're going to do is we're going to target the the camera class. And camera specifically has a camera.main that is the main camera assigned to our scene. So we can definitely target the camera that's active in our scene right now. And we're going to ask the camera, what is your field of view? And that's going to give us our current one for tracking purposes. What we're going to do next is we're going to go into our update, and I'm going to kind of put this with our shooting. Actually, we've got our fire bullets. Let's go below that. We did our weapon switching. After our weapons are done switching, we're going to go ahead and start working on this. So we're going to do if, and we want to get the second mouse button. So we're going to do if input.get mouse button 1, because that's our right mouse button. Alternatively, if you'd prefer to bind this to your scroll wheels, pressing down, the actual button on your scroll wheel, you could use 2. You don't want to use the scroll wheel itself because that's how we're swapping guns, but you could make it so that when you hold down on the scroll wheel, it would go ahead and change. So, but I'm going to use button 1, which is the right mouse button. I may decide to change that if we do something like add grenades or something later, but and I want an alternate fire, but for now this is good. Okay, so if you're pressing mouse button 1, what we want to do is we want to increase our zoom, which is really decreasing our FOV. So we're going to say FOV minus equals our FOV, what was that? It was zoom speed. Zoom speed times time.delta time. Again, we always want to calibrate against time.delta time because that's going to even out our frame rate, even us out for frame rate. And once we figured out the FOV that we want to use, we're going to do camera.main.field of view equals FOV. Now you could target that directly. I don't technically need that FOV variable, but what I've found is by having a controlling variable and assigning things to that and being able to modify that variable has really come in handy. So we're going to go ahead and run with that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and save this, and we're just going to see what happens. And for now, when I go back in here, I'm going to leave the enemy but I think I'm going to disable his script for a second. And that's going to just keep him from moving, keep him from shooting, keep him from doing anything. I still want to be able to see him, but I don't want him shooting at me because I want to be able to concentrate on my zoom. So we're going to just disable that enemy script for a minute. We're going to go ahead and play. And I'm right clicking, and I'm not really getting anything right now. So the first thing I want to do, oh, I know what I did wrong. Actually, I do want to test this because I think I know what's wrong, and yep, I was right. Okay, so if we pay attention, if you look really, really closely here, I'm not going to move my mouse for a second. I'm going to line up really close on this wall here, and you can see that that wall is actually moving away from my mouse. So it is actually zooming. Our code is actually working. We're just zooming in so slowly that this functionality is completely useless. So we're going to stop. And I think I'm going to go to my player. I'm going to put away the guns list by just clicking this little arrow. We don't really need to have that in our face anymore. And I'm going to change my zoom speed from 1 to 10. And we're going to see if that makes much of a difference. I mean, it'll definitely make a difference because we just multiplied it by a factor of 10. But we'll see if that feels good. Whoops, I shot at things. I hope that doesn't kill him. Darn it. Well, that's okay. So we're going to play with our zoom. That is better. But that doesn't feel as fast as what I think most game zooms run. So I'm going to just kind of bump this up. I'm going to try 20. And at this point, I'm really just trying to kind of, I'm not going to worry about fully finessing this, but that's still really pretty slow. I'm going to be a little bit bolder this time. I think I'm going to go to 40. Because really what I want to be able to do is zoom in on that enemy in like half a second. So that's still pretty slow, but that's getting better. So I think I'm just going to keep on increasing by 20s. And we're just going to test that until we get something that we like. It's definitely better. I think maybe 80. I think 80 is going to do it. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so 80 feels pretty good to me. So we're going to go ahead and use 80 for this. That's quite a bit higher than the one that we started with, but there we go. And the next thing you're going to notice is that my current FOV is 1.117, and I am really on this enemy. And if I zoom in enough, I can't see through it because we're again that forward arc. But this is really, really tight and not very useful. And as I'm letting go of the mouse right now, you're going to notice that that FOV is not really increasing. So, in fact, I've actually gone negative, and I really don't want to be able to do that. I think we need to stop at 0. So we're going to go ahead and stop this. We're going to put in some controls to keep that FOV where we want it. So I'm going to jump back to my code for a second. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually institute some caps. And what a cap is it's our, I'm sorry, excuse me, we're going to use a clamp. And a clamp is just a value or a function that can trap a value between two numbers. So what we're going to do here is we're actually just going to, I'm going to take, because we're going to be using some other if statements here, I'm going to cut this whole camera.main.fov. I'm going to cut that out of my if statement and just paste it immediately below. Whoops, that is not what I wanted. There we go. Okay, we're going to paste that immediately below. And before we do this, we're going to do FOV equals, and we're going to clamp. And that's a function in the mathf library. That's float math, basically. So we're going to do mathf dot, the function is clamp. And what you do here is you put in the value that you want to clamp. So we're going to do FOV. And the second parameter is the lowest possible value that it is allowed to be. And we've already decided this. It's FOV min. And the greatest value it's allowed to be, which for us is, again, FOV max. And there we go. Now it's clamped. And the nice thing about this is it's going to still try to subtract. And if we were to output what it is here, you would see a number lower than 10 potentially. Like if you did something in the line 134.5 here, it would clamp. Or excuse me, it would show us that lower value, and then clamp would immediately say, no, 10 is the lowest we're allowed to be, so get back up there, and it would bump it back up to 10. If the value is something like 12 or 15, that's between these two numbers, so it would just be 12 or 15. If I get up to 60, 60 is allowed, but if I got to 61, it would say, no, that's too high. We're going to put you back down to FOV max, which is 60. So this is going to hold that number between the two values, and if we save that, we should immediately see our result, which is, I can zoom in, I get about this close. I am still holding the right mouse button, but nothing new is happening. And you can kind of see my FOV down here in the bottom is at 10, and it's not budging even if I continue to click the right mouse button. I don't know if you can hear that on the microphone, but I am just smacking that thing and it is not doing anything, which is pretty good. Now the next problem that we're having is we're not getting any pull back. It's not trying to unzoom, and I don't really want to add a control to make you have to click back. Like, I don't want to make it attached to the middle mouse button or anything. What I want to do is I want to just make it so that if you release the mouse button, it starts pulling back. And to kind of account for the fact that generally the unzoom is faster than the zoom, what I think we're going to do here is we're going to make it go 1.5 times our zoom speed. So we're going to go ahead and say, so really what we want it to do is if we're not holding down the button. So if we are holding down the button and it does this, then else is going to handle if we're not holding down the button. So we're going to go ahead and add some code here, and all we're going to do here is say FOV plus equals zoom speed times 1.5 times time.delta time. And the reason for the 1.5 is just because I want it to unzoom a little faster than it zooms. And since that 1.5 is a float value, I do need to do 1.5f. So we're going to go ahead and do file save all. We're going to go ahead and run that. And now if I zoom in pretty quick, and I zoom out really fast. So there's my zoom in, there's my zoom out. And now everything is working pretty much the way I want it to. I can move around, I can zoom, I can shoot, I can unzoom, I can still shoot. This is working out pretty nice. I'm not really thrilled, and I'm going to do a little bit more fine tuning with that camera. I'm not really thrilled with how this is showing up in the game window. So I'm going to drag the game window out and kind of give myself a little bit more room, because this is kind of how I typically would want my, my display set up. I'm not really happy with this sphere being in there. So what I think I might do is I might just disable that mesh render, to be honest, because we can't, the enemy can't see our player, so it's kind of a placebo anyways. So I'm just going to take the players, actually I'm going to do this in the prefab. I'm going to go to my player prefab, and I'm just going to delete that. Well, I'm not going to delete that sphere. I might want it back sometime, like if I make this multiplayer or something. But for now, I'm just going to turn off the sphere, and that is going to take it out of my clip view. It is gone now if we look at it in the scene view. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and get out of this and look at it in the normal scene view. That sphere is now gone. I can bring it back if I want to. And then the other thing that I need to think about is this HP bar that I've now moved out of the way of the camera. And what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to parent the HP bar. So I'm going to go kind of digging around in here. I've got my HP max bar. Oh, I don't want to parent that to the camera. So I guess I do just need to move it forward and kind of mess with this. So I'm going to, again, split up my game view, because I want to be able to see out the camera while I'm messing with this bar. But I'm going to grab the HP bar. I'm going to drag it forward a bit. There we go. To a spot where I can kind of start to see a little. And really, I'm just trying to get it into the camera's view a little. And I'm going to try to center that as best I can. And now I'm going to put the display on full view. That's a bit big. Let's go ahead and pull that forward a little and forward it, or put it down. Really, I'm going to go forward until I'm taking up a good amount of the screen here, and then I'm gonna kind of nudge it. I'm not really happy with any of this. There, that's probably as good as it's gonna get for now. Later on, we will show how to move that kind of thing into a canvas, which is gonna display it without having to like keep it in front of the camera. And I think I might just make this whole thing smaller. So I'm gonna take that HP max bar and let's change my Y and Z. I'm gonna go like maybe 0.05 and 0.05. And that's definitely making this thing just a ton smaller. And again, I'm gonna go maybe even 0.2 and 0.2. Okay, so I've still got a little bit of that 3D effect on it. Whoops, but we're definitely seeing it a little bit differently now. It's still really long there. I'm not really happy with this. So again, this is just kind of an attempt at like just nudging some things. Instead of scale 1 on the main bar, I think I can go maybe 0.8. Let's see how that looks. Maybe 0.7. And this is at 561. I'm going to try 0.5 because I think the gun is mounted at let's go 0.6. I'm trying to kind of line it up a little bit better with the bar. And again, we're just kind of nudging things. Now that I've got that centered nicely, now I can just play with my vertical and my Z and Y. So I'm going to play with my Y a little bit. I'm going to play with my Z a little bit. And I think that's going to look pretty good. That's still a little wide. Anyways, well, let's see here. Let's scale this. Oh, there we go. I like that. Okay. So 0.5 is feeling pretty good. And so now that's set up nice. It's still in our camera. We've kind of adjusted that. I'm not super thrilled with that HP bar. I liked it as a backpack. I don't really like it as a, not like, I don't know, it's almost like a crossbar on my gun. But it's working, and I guess that's what's important here. So we're gonna go ahead and redock the game window, and I just kind of want to test this out even with the zoom. So if I zoom, I kind of lose my hit point bar, but that's really probably okay. And now my zoom is feeling pretty good. I've got my hit point bar back on the screen, and everything's kind of moving pretty nice. So I think this is pretty good. And I think we can kind of call it good for our tutorial for the day. So this has been the, actually, you know what? That bar would look better if we moved it up to the top. I'm not ready to be done with this yet. Sorry. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to try one more thing here. I'm going to take that bar. Again, I'm still on HP max bar. I'm going to try putting it up here instead. Kind of nudging it down. There we go. Again, I'm going to go kind of more into my game view. That's a little bit better. I feel like that Z is still a bit much. Yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. That's looking good. Okay, so now the bar's in a really weird spot, but I can see, again, it goes away if I zoom, but it's gonna adjust and it's gonna look good even when the enemy's shooting me. So I think that's where we're gonna stop for the day. That's still a little bit bigger than I'd like, but I think if I keep on messing with it, this video is going to be 3 hours long. So we're going to go ahead and stop there. So this has been the zoom in, zoom out portion of the tutorial. I hope that helped you, at least the zoom in, zoom out part, maybe more than the hit point bar nudging, but that's okay. That's where we're at right now. And of course, as always, if you enjoyed this, please hit like and subscribe. And as we always try to say in closing, keep on creating. Have a great night, and we will see you next time for another adventure. Take care, everybody.